Yi Chuan slowly bent down, his hand closing around the fallen blade. The weapon was heavy, stained with blood, its edge still gleaming faintly. He lifted it, staring at it calmly. "This knife actually looks pretty good," he muttered, almost amused. At the side, one of the men shouted in disbelief. "Did that kid really reach 7th rank apprentice? That's impossible. Even Ling Xuan is only at the 6th rank." The old man narrowed his eyes and explained in a calm voice, "It's possible. The realm divisions may be the same for both lifestyle and combat professions, but the way they level up is completely different." Images flashed through everyone's minds. Fighters training day and night, fists striking wooden dummies, legs smashing through solid posts. Combat professions, he continued, must fight, bleed, and master countless techniques in the early stages. That's why their growth is slower at first. Then his tone grew heavier, almost solemn. But once they break through, their growth accelerates, faster and faster with every step. He paused, glancing at Yi Chuan before adding, "Lifestyle professions, on the other hand, have it much easier. Alchemists, blacksmiths, they don't need to fight. All they need to do is pour their focus into their craft." The crowd fell silent. The difference between the professions was now clear, but Yi Chuan's rapid rise remained a mystery. The elder pointed at Yi Chuan. Take Yi Chuan, for example. As a pig butcher, all he needs to do is slaughter pigs again and again, day after day. That alone is enough to raise his realm in the early stages. Everyone's eyes widened as an image of Yi Chuan flashed in their minds, his apron dark, his knife glowing red, striking down pigs with terrifying precision. The blue-haired girl, Ling Xuan, frowned, her voice sharp. "So he's only relying on the stats from his higher realm? Isn't that unfair to combat professions?" The old man explained further. "Every time Yi Chuan advances, the number of pigs he needs to kill doubles. By the time he reaches the Ascension realm, the number required will be astronomical. But combat professions, once they master their techniques, their growth becomes faster and faster." Another student whispered nervously, "So you're saying right now, he can defeat Jing Long because of his higher realm. But in a few years, combat professions will surpass him completely." The old man's face turned serious. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying." Yi Chuan waved his hand casually, looking as if nothing had happened. "If there's nothing else, I'll be going now." Everyone stared in shock at his carefree attitude. He had just fought and leveled up, yet he looked as though it didn't matter at all. But then, Ling Xuan stepped forward, her blue eyes filled with frustration. "Yi Chuan, why must you go to such lengths?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Did you really go through all that trouble, killing pigs every single day, just to level up and show off to me?" Yi Chuan stood there silently as Ling Xuan's words cut deep. But instead of answering, he simply sighed and said, "I'll be honest with you. I've already been guaranteed a spot at Sky Dome Academy. We're in different worlds now." His calm tone carried no emotion, but the meaning behind his words was heavy. Before anyone could respond, Xiananan, her eyes fiery with emotion, stepped forward. "I can't just stand by and watch this," she shouted, her voice sharp. Everyone turned to look at her. She clenched her fists and glared. "Are you people ever going to stop? Yi Chuan was helping me search for the blood moonflower. Running into you guys was just our bad luck." She stood tall, her anger burning like fire. "So tell me, what nonsense are you making up in your heads?" As soon as Yi Chuan's friend spoke up, mocking voices cut through the night. A girl sneered loudly, her face twisted with disgust. "Oh my, so someone actually treasures the scumbag Su Ling dumped? You must be blind." Another boy quickly added, his tone sharp and cruel. "Exactly. This Yi Chuan has no other skills, but he's sure good at picking up women. Found a new one so fast too. Bitch and a dog. What a perfect match." Their laughter echoed, dripping with venom. Before anyone could reply, a sudden crack rang out. The girl who had insulted Yi Chuan was sent flying backward, her body spinning through the air. The crowd froze in shock. Even the old man who had been speaking earlier was left clutching his face, a fresh red mark burning on his cheek. He looked around with wide, confused eyes. "Why did you hit me too?" he stammered, his voice trembling between fear and disbelief. Xiananan crossed her arms and let out an angry huff. She stood in front of Yi Chuan, her face full of defiance. But then Ling Xuan touched her cheek where the slap had landed. Her eyes went cold, and her voice trembled with rage. "You dare hit me?" she growled, her expression twisting in fury. Her body began to glow with a powerful aura. Energy surged around her as she pulled out a sharp blade. "Are you looking to die?" she shouted, her killing intent filling the air. Yi Chuan lifted the glowing token high and said coldly, "I dare you to touch me." The power in his voice made the entire place fall silent. Suddenly, the old man stepped forward, panic written across his face. "Wait, stop," he shouted, blocking the furious Ling Xuan. His eyes widened as recognition dawned. "No wonder this girl looks familiar. She's the young lady of the Xia family." At once, his tone changed. He forced a smile and bowed respectfully. "Miss Xia, what are you doing here?" The brown-haired girl, Xiaonanan, crossed her arms and gave him a sharp look. It's none of your business. I'll go wherever I want. Her eyes narrowed as she glared at him. But you, Principal Zhao, the quality of your students really leaves something to be desired. Cold sweat ran down the old man's face. He laughed nervously, bowing repeatedly. Yes, it's my fault. I'll be sure to discipline them properly when we return. The brown-haired girl, Xiaonanan, suddenly pointed at Ling Xuan and shouted with authority, "Make her apologize to Yi Chuan." Ling Xuan froze, her eyes widening. She thought, shocked. She, Xia Beihai's daughter, her fists trembled. Why is she with Yi Chuan of all people? Principal Zhao's face darkened. He barked angrily, "Hurry up and apologize. Did you hear me?" Ling Xuan bit her lip, humiliation burning in her chest. Finally, she lowered her head and forced the words out. "I'm sorry." But as she turned away, her eyes were filled with rage. "The Xia family, just you wait." Yi Chuan waved his hand calmly. "Let's go, or we'll miss the bus." He didn't even look back, as if nothing had happened. Xiaonanan followed closely behind him. Suddenly, a loud voice came from behind. "Get back here. Give me back my Qingfang saber." It was the red-haired boy, Jing Long, his face twisted with anger. He pointed at Yi Chuan and shouted as he charged forward. Yi Chuan turned his head slightly. His eyes were cold. "If you've got the guts, come and take it back yourself. I'll be waiting," he said calmly. Jing Long froze, his body shaking with rage. Veins bulged on his forehead as he screamed, "You." But Yi Chuan had already walked away, ignoring him completely. Jing Long clenched his fists, grinding his teeth, then roared into the empty forest. "You just wait." The forest grew darker as Yi Chuan and the girl walked further. Dry branches twisted above them like claws, and the path narrowed along a rocky cliffside. The air was heavy, almost warning them of danger. The brown-haired girl, Xiaonanan, pulled out a folded map from her clothes. The paper caught the faint light, glowing softly. She studied it closely, her eyes widening. "This must be the place," she said seriously. "We need to be careful." On the map, a red X was drawn, and beside it was a sketch of a snake, its fangs bared. Yi Xuan glanced at the knife in his hand as a blue light flashed before his eyes. A system notification appeared: exclusive pig butchering knife selected. God-slaying edge is now in effect. Every pig killed with this knife grants you 0.2 free attribute points. He raised an eyebrow. Luff 0.2. It doubled. Looks like choosing the right weapon really makes a difference. As he thought that, the girl beside him reached into her clothes and pulled out 2 glowing orbs, one red, one blue. Yi Chuan blinked in disbelief, his expression stiffening. "What do you have in there? A treasure chest?" "What is this?" he asked, eyes widening. Xiaonanan smiled proudly. "These are called Thunderfire Pearls. Even an expert from the Ascension realm would be badly injured if hit by one. When the Blood Moon Serpent appears, these could be our lifeline." Yi Chuan looked at her and sighed. "You're really something else," he said with a faint smile. "I'll go up and take a look first." With the heavy knife in his hand, he leapt forward. His body sliced through the air and landed firmly on the rocky ground ahead. Dust and moonlight scattered around him as his boots touched down. The ground beneath him was blanketed with bright red flowers. Their petals glowed like fire under the moonlight. Yi Chuan's eyes widened. "It's really here," he muttered. Xiaonanan leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "And this isn't just an ordinary blood moon flower. It's a blood crystal twin flower. Wow, we're so lucky." But her excitement froze in an instant. Cold sweat ran down her cheek as a shadow loomed behind Yi Chuan. From the darkness, 2 glowing red eyes emerged, burning like fire. A massive serpent's head slowly rose, its scales glimmering black and purple, its body coiling through the mist. The Blood Moon Serpent had awakened. Yi Chuan stood still, the freshly picked flower in his hand. The monster's killing intent pressed down like a storm. Yet his expression didn't change. The serpent roared, its breath shaking the ground, its crimson eyes locked onto him. Yi Chuan looked up, completely unfazed. "What are you looking at?" he said coolly. "Never seen someone pick a flower before?" The serpent's blazing red eyes narrowed, a low hiss echoing like thunder through the canyon. Its massive head leaned forward, confused for a moment, as if asking, "What are you doing with my flower?" Yi Chuan didn't flinch. He casually held the glowing flower in one hand and the black blade in the other. Without hesitation, he turned and sprinted across the cliff, the serpent's burning gaze tracking his every move. From behind, Xiaonanan shouted nervously, "Don't just stand there stupidly. Hurry up." Her voice cracked with panic. The ground shook as the serpent shifted, its massive shadow swallowing the rocks around them. Xiaonanan's eyes widened. She could already sense the monster's killing intent rising. "Be careful," she screamed, clutching the Thunderfire Pearls tightly in her hands, ready to throw them at a moment's notice. But Yi Chuan, his steps never slowed. His back was straight, his eyes calm, as if he wasn't facing a legendary beast, but just another obstacle in his path. The serpent roared, its red eyes glowing brighter, and lunged forward. Yi Chuan leaped high into the air, his blade shining, ready to strike. At the same time, Xiaonanan hurled a glowing bead, the Thunderfire Pearl, straight at the monster's face. Boom! The explosion shook the entire cliff. A wave of fire and shock hit Yi Chuan mid-air, knocking him back. "Wah!" he cried as his body spun uncontrollably before crashing to the ground. Dust and rocks scattered everywhere. "Yi Chuan, are you all right?" Xiananan shouted, panic filling her voice as she ran toward him. Yi Chuan groaned, pushing himself up. His clothes were torn, but his eyes remained sharp. He looked toward the giant serpent, which had stopped in its tracks. Even the beast seemed surprised. Smoke curled from its scales as it hissed angrily, glaring at them. "That bead," Yi Chuan muttered, watching the lingering sparks in the air. It had such destructive power. The girl clutched another Thunderfire pearl tightly in her hand, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She looked at him and said, "This is our chance. If we use them well, we might survive." The battle paused for a brief moment. Yi Chuan reached out and handed the glowing flower to the girl. "Here, take it," he said. Her eyes sparkled as she held it carefully. "Blood crystal twin flower," she gasped, her voice full of wonder. Curious, she looked up at him and asked, "By the way, what's this flower even used for?" Yi Chuan's gaze remained steady as he explained, "The blood crystal twin flower is a mutated form of the blood moon flower. Normal blood moon flowers can slow aging, but this one is different. This flower can grant eternal youth." The girl's mouth fell open in shock. Her hands trembled as she stared at the glowing petals. His words echoed in her mind eternal youth. Which woman in the world wouldn't dream of such timeless beauty? Ye Chuan stood up slowly, leaning on his black sword for support. His face was calm, but a faint smile crossed his lips. "I see," he said softly. Then, with a rare warmth in his voice, he added, "Mom will definitely love this." As Yi Chuan leapt back toward the cliffside, the girl's eyes followed the glowing flower in his hand. "Do you mean to give the other one to me?" she asked hopefully. Ye Chuan's lips curved faintly. "Hey, this brat finally figured it out," he thought, glancing at the second blood crystal twin flower. He slipped it quickly into his backpack, just in time. Hiss. The chilling sound ripped through the air, sharp and venomous. The ground trembled as a towering shadow rose before them. Glowing scarlet eyes pierced the haze. The monstrous serpent, larger and more menacing than before, slithered forward. Its scales shimmered with violet-black light, and its breath oozed with killing intent. Yi Chuan tightened his grip on his sword. Across the chasm, Xiananan stood frozen within the serpent's suffocating aura. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "It actually survived a direct hit from a Thunderfire bead," she gasped. Her face grew pale as cold sweat rolled down her cheek. "Impossible. Even a beast at this level shouldn't have survived that." She clenched her fists tightly and continued. "This Blood Moon Python, even if it hasn't reached the Climbing Pond realm yet, its strength is already close to the peak of a 9th rank apprentice." On the opposite cliff, Yi Chuan steadied his stance, sword in hand, staring at the giant serpent as it loomed over them with burning red eyes. "Do you have more beads?" he shouted across the gap. His voice tense, Xiananan shook her head quickly, panic rising in her voice. My dad only gave me one pair." The Blood Moon Python reared back, its eyes blazing like molten fire. A thunderous hiss shook the canyon walls, sending cracks splintering through the rocks beneath their feet. Yi Chuan stood unmoving, his gaze locked with the serpent's. A cold glint flashed in his eyes as a blue system window flickered into existence before him. His aura changed instantly. The air around him grew heavy, the faint scent of bloodlust spreading like a storm. Even the giant python's burning gaze reflected his figure, two silhouettes of Yi Chuan, sharp and merciless, staring back from within its scarlet pupils. The beast let out another furious roar, its massive body coiling like a mountain of muscle before it struck. The ground quaked as it lunged forward with terrifying speed. "Yi Chuan, what are you standing there for?" Xiananan screamed, panic flooding her voice. She tugged at his arm desperately. "Run!" Xiananan, her face flushed and her voice filled with emotion, leaned toward him and shouted, "Of course I'm waiting for you. After all, you risked your life to pick the other blood crystal flower for me." Her eyes sparkled with hope, truly believing Yi Chuan had done it all for her. But Yi Chuan's expression didn't change. His voice was calm, almost cold, as he replied, "That's for my mom." For a moment, silence filled the air. Xiananan's eyes widened. Her smile froze, twisting into disbelief. "What?" she screamed, her voice cracking. Before she could say more, the Blood Moon Python roared, its mouth gaping wide to reveal rows of gleaming fangs and glowing red eyes. The ground shook under its rage. Yi Chuan and Xiananan turned and sprinted, but the monstrous beast was already closing the distance. "It's over. Too late," the girl cried, terror in her voice. Yi Chuan grabbed her hand and pulled her along, irritation flashing in his eyes. Bringing this woman along is such a hassle, he thought grimly. The python lunged forward with terrifying speed, its massive jaws snapping shut. The impact sent a violent shockwave through the air. Xiananan was flung upward, spinning helplessly before crashing hard onto the rocky ground. The serpent's red eyes locked onto Yi Chuan. With another furious roar, it charged straight toward him, its killing intent thick enough to choke the air. From the ground, Xiananan looked up in horror, her face pale. Yi Chuan, she screamed, her voice trembling with fear. She stood frozen, her body shaking as the colossal shadow of the python fell over her. Its forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air, ready to strike Yi Chuan. "Did you hear me? Come out quickly," she screamed, her voice trembling with panic. The beast lunged forward, its massive jaws opening wide, rows of sharp fangs glinting with murderous intent. She shut her eyes, bracing for death. But in that instant, a blinding flash of light cut through the darkness. Slash blood sprayed through the air as the python roared in agony. Xianan gasped, eyes wide. The monstrous serpent thrashed violently, raining blood like a crimson storm. And then, from within the beast's gaping wound, a figure slowly stepped out, drenched in scarlet. It was Yi Chuan. His cold eyes glowed faintly as he gripped his blade, his voice calm and steady. "Were you calling me just now?" he asked, wiping the blood from his mouth as if nothing had happened. Xianan's eyes filled with tears of relief. She threw herself into Yi Chuan's arms, hugging him tightly. "You're safe. Thank goodness. I don't want anyone dying because of me," she said, her voice shaking. Yi Chuan stood stiff, his expression awkward. He wasn't used to this kind of sudden closeness. Then the girl suddenly pulled back, covering her nose with both hands. Her face twisted in disgust. "Ugh, that stench. You were this close to being digested and turned into python dung," she exclaimed, almost gagging. Yi Chuan just stared at her, sweat sliding down the side of his face. He sighed quietly, thinking to himself that she seemed more worried about the smell than the fact he'd just cut his way out of a giant monster. As he caught his breath, a glowing blue screen flickered before his eyes. Defeated a special beast level increased by 80%. Title acquired. Nemesis of the Serpent Clan. Extra damage plus 1%, gained 0.2 free attribute points. Yi Chuan's expression remained calm, but inside, a spark of satisfaction stirred. His strength was steadily growing. "Let's head back," he said simply, turning toward the forest path. The girl nodded quickly, still shaken from the fight. Together, they made their way toward the city gates. As soon as they passed through the archway, several people rushed forward to meet them. "Miss Ya, why are you only just returning?" one of them shouted, his voice full of worry. An elder greeted her with a worried face. "You had me so worried," he said, sighing in relief. "I was about to send people to search for you." Miss Ya quickly smiled and held out the glowing flower in her hands. "We found this. Mother will surely be delighted," she said happily, her face shining with excitement. The elder frowned deeply, his tone stern. "If Miss wished for a blood crystal flower, you could have ordered the servants to find it. Outside the city is too dangerous. If something had happened to you," Miss Ye shook her head quickly, holding the flower close to her chest. "I wanted to pick it personally for my mother. Besides, with his protection, there was no problem," she said firmly, pointing toward Yi Chuan. The elder's sharp eyes turned to the boy. His voice grew heavy. "And this young man is?" Yi Chuan stood silently, his expression calm under the elder's scrutinizing gaze. Then, in a steady voice, he replied, "I am Yi Chuan Pig Butcher." The elder narrowed his eyes, studying him carefully. "Wherever there are blood crystal flowers, a blood moon python will appear. Why would Miss Xia choose a mere butcher to protect her?" he thought. But looking at him now, could it be he really did slay the blood moon python? His doubt slowly gave way to a hint of respect. "Student Yi is truly remarkable at such a young age," the elder said aloud. Then he reached into his sleeve and produced a golden ring, holding it forward. "This Xia clan gold ring is worth 200,000. Please, accept it as thanks for saving our young lady." Yi Chuan looked at the ring, but his expression didn't change. Calmly, he shook his head. "No," he said firmly. "I only want a pig slaughtering blade."